This is the FPL Draft Zone, your fantasy team's best signing of the season.
City and Liverpool sneak late wins, but is there any value in their squad players? Spurs fight back to beat Crystal Palace. Does Richarlison's injury open up some new attacking options in draft? And we look at the best way to set up your team ahead of Gameweeks 28 and 29. Hello and welcome to the FPL Draft Zone, a podcast all about Draft FPL, the finest of all fantasy Premier League formats. I'm Dom Crofts, and today we're looking back at Game Week 27, highlighting some under-the-radar performers who could improve your draft team, and then we're going to look ahead to Game Week 28 with waiver suggestions, ones to watch, and much, much more. Plus, with Game Week 29 fast approaching, we chat through the best approach to a game week that will feature only 4 fixtures and 8 teams in action. But before we get started, I just wanted to thank you all for your patience over the last few weeks with the podcast suddenly taking a bit of a hiatus. Unfortunately, I had some pretty bad news and I lost someone very special to me, and as a result I wasn't really in the right headspace to do this show. But I hope that in my absence you have all picked up some big wins in your draft leagues, and hopefully as we head into the home straight, I can be here to help you through these last 11 game weeks, and together we can secure those league titles we are all desperate to win. And there is no better place to start this week than a quick look back at Game Week 27 so far, with just one game left to play. And with no lunchtime kickoff on Saturday, it all began with those 3 o'clock kickoffs, starting at the G-Tech Community Stadium, where Brentford and Chelsea played out a 2-2 draw. Wisser and Jackson among the goal scorers in this one. Cole Palmer also doing what Cole Palmer does and picking up a return. It was Everton 1, West Ham 3 at Goodison Park. Everton had 22 shots and an XG of 2.7, but no ruthless streak for the Toffees meant no points for the Toffees. Fulham 3, Brighton 0 at Craven Cottage. Brighton have a European tie against Roma on the horizon. Injuries seem to be taking their toll on their league form as well, but for Rodrigo Muniz, wow, he continued his good form for Fulham with a goal and an assist. It was Newcastle 3, Wolves 0 at St James's Park. Alexander Isak scoring his 11th league goal of the season as Newcastle won for the first time at home since Game Week 17. Nottingham Forest 0, Liverpool 1 at the City Ground. A controversial late winner from Darwin Núñez enough for Liverpool to retain top spot in the top flight. And Spurs 3, Crystal Palace 1. Eze returning to the Palace team with a goal, but Spurs turning the game around with goals from Romero, Son and Timo Werner. And then in the late kickoff on Saturday, it finished Luton 2, Aston Villa 3. Villa are in control of this one for long, large spells, but Luton have scored in 14 consecutive games now and look set for a point before Lucas Digne's late winner for Unai Emery's side. Then on Sunday, Burnley 0, Bournemouth 2. No return for Dom Solanke in this one, but clean sheets for those who moved early for Cherry's assets. And Manchester City 3, Manchester United 1. Phil Foden the hero, as he made 11 goals for the season so far, his best tally in his career. And that means that at the time of recording, there is just one fixture left to play. That will take place on Monday evening with Sheffield United at home to Arsenal. Sheffield United will be looking to avoid a third successive 5-0 home defeat. Meanwhile, Arsenal, well, they'll be looking to make it 7 wins on the spin and bag another hatful of goals. In the previous 6 games, they've scored 25 goals, which works out at more than 4 goals a game on average. So good luck to Sheffield United ahead of that one. So those are the results from Game Week 27, but who shone bright like a diamond and whose reputation sunk like a stone? It's time for winners and losers.
The FPL Draft Zone, winners and losers.
First on our list of winners, Ollie Watkins. He was drafted 12th on average in draft leagues around the world, according to data from Draft FC, but in terms of points this season, he should have been drafted first. He has been unbelievable all campaign, and his form shows no sign of slowing down. 2 more goals for him this weekend. He's now got 16 goals and 15 assists in 27 games. So on average, he's actually getting more than a return a match. He's also picked up 24 bonus points over the course of the season, and only his teammate Douglas Luiz and Brighton's Pascal Gross have picked up more. He is also the highest point scorer in all of FPL this season. He's got 183 points and counting. Sadly, for anyone who doesn't have him in draft, you're very unlikely to be able to convince a rival manager to part with him. But next season, he is going to be high on everybody's radar when it comes to draft night 2024-2025. Another winner this week, Carlton Morris. A few weeks ago, there was quite a lot of debate over who was the better pick out of Morris and Elijah Adebayo, his Luton teammate. We vouched for Morris on this show, and it's fair to say he has done us proud and proven himself to be the better buy. He is now the 5th highest scoring forward in the game. He's got 8 goals and 6 assists for the season so far. He's returned in 6 of his last 7 games. He is on penalties as well, don't forget, and he's playing for a side that seem to enjoy scoring lots and lots of goals. Luton have a double game week in game week 28, which we'll discuss later, and they also play in that blank game week 29. So if you did manage to pick up Morris in your draft league, give yourself a very big, very smug pat on the back, because he has been a great asset for your side, and he looks like he's going to continue to be a great asset between now and the end of the season. And a couple of other big winners this week that we wanted to flag: Alphonse Areola and Quivan Kelleher of Liverpool. Areola is now the top scoring goalkeeper in the game after his penalty save in West Ham's win over Everton, and Kelleher is expected to be Liverpool's starting goalkeeper for at least the next month as a result of Alisson's hamstring injury. There are reports, or rumours I should say, that hamstring injury is worse than first reported. Kelleher picked up a 9-point return in Liverpool's win over Forest, and that came in the same week he kept a clean sheet at Wembley to secure a Carabao Cup win for Jurgen Klopp's men. So if you have Kelleher, or if you don't but he is available on the waivers, he is a lovely route into that Liverpool backline. And we can't do our winners without flagging Mr. Phil Foden. He is having his best goal-scoring season ever. He is Manchester City's leading point scorer now this season, and he loves a goal against Manchester United. He's got 6 goals against them now, and all 6 have come in his last 4 league appearances against them. So well done, Phil Foden, and well done to draft managers that own Phil Foden. On to losers, and there's only one standout loser for us this week, and that is Pervis Estupinan. For long spells this season, Brighton's left-back seemed like a great option in draft. He started the season on fire, got a goal and 2 assists in his first 2 games. He scored as recently as game week 19 as well when he played Spurs, but in recent weeks he's lost his place in the team to Tariq Lamptey, and in the previous 6 game weeks his form has fallen off a cliff. He's got just 3 points picked up in the last 274 minutes he's played. Brighton's injury crisis seems to be going from bad to worse too. They also have the distraction of Europe coming up again. They've got Roma this week. And Brighton have still only picked up 3 clean sheets all season. So if you do own Estupinan and you have been faithful to Estupinan, now might be the time to wise up and bin him off. His reputation and his potential to pick up attacking returns might still be enough to tempt a rival to do a deal with you, and in my opinion, someone like an Alfie Doughty would be a much better asset going forward than Estupinan, especially if you can get a deal like that over the line this week. So that's some of the best and worst performers from game week 27, but who is the player that left rival managers in the mud and owners over the moon? It's time for our fantasy hero of the week.
Hero of the Week.
And this week's fantasy hero of the week is Rodrigo Muniz. Fulham brought in Armando Broja in that January transfer window on loan from Chelsea, but he has not had a look-in as a result of Muniz's form. He's now got 5 goals in 5 games. He picked up 1 assist in that time too. He's also got 9 bonus points across those 5 games. A few months ago, Fulham fans expected Muniz to join a championship club on loan, and now they want him to start up front for Brazil. He's younger than Mitrovic. He is faster than Mitrovic, but right now he is having the same impact that Mitrovic had last season. So big congratulations to Muniz, from sitting in the stands on loan at Middlesbrough last season to Fantasy Hero of the Week this season.
Hero of the Week.
And now it's time to induct another wrong'un into our Hall of Shame. Yes, it's time to reveal our fantasy supervillain of the week.
Supervillain of the week. Supervillain of the week. Supervillain of the week. Supervillain of the week. I hate his guts.
And this week's supervillain is not a player. Oh no. It's not a manager. Oh no. It's not even a fan. It's a referee, and his name is Paul Tierney. A terrible decision from Tierney in the Forest-Liverpool game that cost the home side a point, but more importantly for draft managers, it was a decision that wiped out Forest clean sheets across the board and then gave Darwin Núñez a chance to rack up points that could well have made the difference between a win and a defeat in your draft matchup. Hopefully, you ended up on the right side of that decision, but if not, you have my commiserations, and you should direct all of your scorn, all of your bitterness, all of your ire at Mr. Paul Tierney, our fantasy supervillain of the week.
Supervillain of the week. Supervillain of the week. Supervillain of the week. Supervillain of the week. I hate his guts.
Okay, time now to focus on game week 28, which looks set to be a key game week. Firstly, because it is a double game week for Bournemouth and Luton, but also because the moves you make when it comes to waivers and trades need to take into account blank game week 29, where just 8 teams will be in action. So lots to think about here, and the best place to start is with the fixtures that we've got coming up in game week 28. They start with the early kickoff on Saturday between Manchester United and Everton. Both sides looking to bounce back from defeats. United were 3-0 winners at Goodison Park earlier in the season. It's Bournemouth against Sheffield United, the first of 2 games featuring the Cherries. They play the bottom club, a club who love to ship goals. It's Crystal Palace against Luton at Selhurst Park. Oliver Glasner looking to make it 2 home wins on the spin for Palace. Luton wanting to make amends after that late defeat to Villa this weekend. Wolves entertain Fulham at Molineux. Wolves underwhelmed at St James's Park. They'll be hungry to right that wrong. Fulham are in fine form at the moment, and fantasy hero of the week, Muniz, is the man of the moment. He will be looking to make it 6 goals in as many games in that one. The late kickoff sees Arsenal take on Brentford. Brentford picked up a point against Chelsea last time out, but Arsenal are in must-win territory every single week, and they will be hoping that rumoured transfer target Ivan Toney does not spoil their Premier League plans. On Sunday, a game that will go a long way to deciding that battle for 4th place. Son and Watkins going head-to-head at Villa Park as Aston Villa take on Spurs. Brighton entertain Nottingham Forest. Forest will be fired up after what happened late on against Liverpool. Brighton will be hoping to avoid another defeat and a European hangover after their game against Roma on Thursday. West Ham, well, they're at home to Burnley. They're in a good moment right now. They've won 2 on the spin, looking to make it a hat-trick of wins against Burnley. Burnley unlikely to present much of a challenge based on their recent results. And then it's the big one, Liverpool against Manchester City. 2 teams that left it late this weekend, but 2 teams that won this weekend and who know a win in this next one will go a long way to realising their Premier League ambitions. Monday night sees Chelsea taking on Newcastle. Newcastle bounce back with a win against Wolves this weekend. Chelsea desperately need a win sooner rather than later as pressure continues to mount on Pochettino. And then on Wednesday, it's that double game week fixture. Bournemouth against Luton, a second home game in a week for the Cherries, a second away game in a week for the Hatters. So those are the fixtures. But who are realistic targets for your draft team? Well, let's take a look at some waiver wants.
The FPL Draft Zone. Waiver wants.
So the first thing to do here, I think, is to look at the teams with the most favourable fixtures. And for that, we have to start with Bournemouth. 2 home games against a painfully poor Sheffield United team and Luton Town mean that any way into their team is a big win for your draft side. Obviously, the likes of Dom Solanke, Neto, Senesi and Semenyo are probably all taken in your draft league already, but there could be some defensive assets available who might be worth picking up. Bournemouth have just picked up their first clean sheet since game week 19 in that win at Burnley, and given the opposition that they are up against, there is surely no better fixture than Sheffield United at home to pick up another clean sheet. And even if you assume that they do concede at home to Luton, you would still be looking at around an 8 points return for anyone you manage to pick up who plays in that Bournemouth backline. So see if the likes of Zabani or Smith are available on the waivers. Senesi only lasted 12 minutes against Burnley as well before pulling up with a hamstring strain. He was replaced by Chris Mepham, so he could be an option if that strain rules Senesi out. Kirkes and Lloyd Kelly are other options, although they are slightly riskier in terms of minutes, depending on any fitness update we get on Kelly. In terms of Bournemouth midfielders, Marcus Tavernier is an option. He's got 2 goals and 4 assists so far this season. He plays most weeks, and in draft, the best ability is availability, so he could be a good pickup. But having said that, Bournemouth fans are not too happy with his recent performances. And according to a lot of social media posts, loads are calling for him to be dropped. He does seem to be a favourite of Iraola, though, so if you do want a Bournemouth midfielder in your squad, he is probably the most reliable option. The other waiver options come with much more rotation risk, but if you like to live on the edge, Luis Sinisterra, Justin Kluivert or Dango Utara could be worth a waiver. Kluivert got his 4th goal of the season against Burnley, and while none of those players are guaranteed starts, as they're all sharing minutes at the moment, Kluivert is probably the best bet in terms of explosiveness. Up front, if you have a rotating striker slot and you don't mind dumping someone for a real punt, Enes Unal could get some game time across these next 2 fixtures. Solanke will obviously start if fit, but there's been a lot of talk that Unal could start up top over the next few weeks, with Solanke dropping slightly deeper. And if that does happen, you would imagine it happening against a side like Sheffield United. There is no better team to tweak your system against and experiment against than the Blades. Unal has got a good goal-scoring record as well. He got 15 goals for Getafe last season, 16 the season before that. He used to play for Manchester City as well, and he's made a couple of good substitute appearances already for Bournemouth. So again, he could be worth a punt with a view to him making an impact in limited minutes against dreadful opposition. The other team playing twice are Luton Town. They travel to Bournemouth and Crystal Palace. Not easy games for them. Defensively, they seem very unlikely to keep any clean sheets. They've conceded 8 goals in their last 2 trips away from Kenilworth Road, but they do know how to score goals. So if somehow Morris or Bene or Barkley are available on the waivers, then it is a no-brainer to get them in. Elijah Adebayo may be free in your league if a manager ditched him following his hamstring injury, but his return date remains up in the air, so keep an eye out for updates before making a move for him. Now, there are, of course, quite a few other teams that do not double in game week 28, and we want to focus on those sides as well. But first, we're going to start with teams who play in 28 and in 29. A reminder of those 4 fixtures in 29. It's Burnley against Brentford at Turf Moor, Luton taking on Nottingham Forest at Kenilworth Road, Fulham entertaining Spurs at Craven Cottage, and then West Ham taking on Aston Villa at the London Stadium. Not many fixtures, not many options. Now, when there is a game week with so few fixtures in draft, managers have some big decisions to make. Decisions about how many players they can field and whether it is worth dropping some players you maybe don't want to drop in order to increase your pool of playing players. The first thing to say here is that it is entirely dependent on where you are in your league, what you have riding on it in that game week, and how engaged you think your rival managers are. But for me, there is no point in decimating a perfectly good squad just for one game week. If you have players who you think you're happy to ditch and know that there is a good chance you won't get them back, and you think by doing that you can secure a win against your game week 29 rival, then by all means go for it. But if you're thinking about dropping proven assets just for 1 week, I would advise against it. Also, if you are in a head-to-head league, don't forget that you can pre-plan for that fixture now. Take a look at your opponent's squad, count up how many players they've got playing in Game Week 29, and weigh up if you think it's enough to beat you. Do a bit of due diligence, do a bit of scouting. If you think that they have got too much for your team and one or two moves might give you a better chance without destroying your squad, then go for it. Make those moves. But if you need to take drastic measures to have any chance of picking up a win, it might be one of those game weeks you just have to sacrifice for the greater good. And of course, don't forget that those teams that won't play in Game Week 29 will have a double in the future. So you need to weigh everything up when making your moves and not take decisions you will regret later on. Having said all of that, though, a few teams who play in 28 and 29 who could be worth targeting include Aston Villa, who are at home to Spurs this week before they travel to West Ham in Game Week 29. The usual suspects at Villa will, of course, all be taken, but Ezri Konsa has just returned to action after an injury layoff. He is not highly owned in draft right now, so if you want to weigh into that Villa backline, he could be the man to help you do that. And Jacob Ramsey is one to watch. He was showing signs of life in the Aston Villa midfield before limping off against Luton. He was outstanding last year after Unai Emery came into the club. He has had a load of injuries this season, though, which has impacted his form. He got an assist against Nottingham Forest in Game Week 26. He played the full 90 in each of his last 3 matches before that Luton game, and he was starting to look sharp. He got 6 goals and 8 assists last year, 1 goal and 1 assist so far this season, nearly scored against Luton. Keep an eye on the news conferences this week and see if that injury that he suffered against Luton is going to keep him out long term or if it was just a precaution. And don't forget, Villa play Ajax on Thursday night in Europe, so we should know more then. And of course, the waiver deadline is not until 11 a.m. on Friday. Other Villa options, if you're desperate, Yuri Tielemans and Clement Longley are 2 worth considering depending on your team and depending on your team's needs. West Ham are another side I think are worth looking at. They picked up their first win of 2024 in Game Week 26 against Brentford and then followed it up with this weekend's victory at Everton. That upswing in form, by the way, has coincided with the return to the side of Lucas Paquetá, who had missed the previous 6 games through injury. Paquetá has 2 goals and 5 assists so far this season. And how about this for a fact? West Ham have not won a game without him this season. That is how important he is to that side. He is a crucial cog in the West Ham machine, and given the lack of fixtures to contend with in Game Week 29, Paquetá is someone who could earn you a few extra points over the next couple of game weeks. They also have Burnley coming up in Game Week 28. There's also a pretty good chance, by the way, some West Ham defenders will still be around on the waivers. They have been conceding a lot of chances in 2024 and would not be high on my list generally, but depending on your Game Week 29 situation and the standings in your league, if you think a couple of appearance points might make the difference in your Game Week 29 head-to-head, it might be worth getting them in now before rival managers pick them off. And as I said, Burnley at home next, so that screams potential clean sheet points to me. A few other players who play in 28 and 29 who might be worth considering. Bit of a long shot here, but I'm going to say him anyway. Keane Lewis Potter. Arsenal away in 28 is not going to earn you too many points, but with the likes of Tony, Maupay and Wissa probably all taken in your draft league, Lewis Potter is probably Brentford's next best attacker. Annoyingly, he did not feature at all in the draw with Chelsea, but they have got Burnley in Game Week 29. He got return in the defeat to West Ham in Game Week 26. He was one of Brentford's better performances in that match. If you look at the highlights and you look at what social media was saying about him, and that Burnley fixture in 29 does seem like it's a bit of a gimme for a Brentford side that will have to attack to try to win that fixture. So he is someone just to keep maybe a quarter of an eye on. Alex Iwobi represents an option for Fulham as well. They go to Wolves in 28 and then they have a home game against Spurs in 29. Iwobi had an XG of 0.51 in that win against Manchester United at Old Trafford. He scored in that one, and as a former Arsenal player, you can sort of see him doing bits against Spurs, I think. And speaking of Spurs, who we all know concede a lot of chances and a lot of goals, their options could now include the likes of Brennan Johnson, especially with the news that Richarlison is out for a few weeks. Johnson picked up 2 assists in the win against Crystal Palace, and he and Timo Werner are 2 attacking assets that may not have been wavered just yet in your league. 2 away games for them against Villa and Fulham is, of course, not ideal. But if there's one thing Spurs do, it is score goals. So you've got to consider their attacking assets from that perspective. And then other teams to think about. Nottingham Forest, who play Brighton in 28 and then go to Luton in 29. Forest are scoring and conceding right now under Nuno Espirito Santo. Over the last 4 games, they've scored 6. They've conceded 8. So their defence is unlikely to reap too many points for you. But if you fancy a bit of Forest offensive action, Callum Hudson-Odoi has been among the goals recently. Morgan Gibbs-White is also a decent option who's always on and off the waivers. And assuming Awoniyi is taken in your league, Divock Origi has had minutes in the last 4 game weeks now. He played 64 minutes against Liverpool, so he could be an option if you have a rotating striker slot and if you're happy to take a gamble in the hope that one extra player could make a difference to your game week 29 prospects. Now, if you're looking at game week 29 and thinking it might not be worth making too many changes and you might just have to suck it up and suffer a defeat, then it's important that you do everything you can to win game week 28. So here are some teams with decent fixtures in 28 who do not play in game week 29. And first up are Crystal Palace. We've already mentioned Luton's woeful defensive record of late. Well, it's Luton who go to Selhurst Park. And with Oliver Glasner giving Palace a bit of a new manager bounce, their attacking options could well be worth looking at. Eberechi Eze has just recovered from another injury. He could still be available in your league as a result. His goal against Spurs, though, would have alerted all managers to that availability. If he is not available, the likes of Jordan Ayew, Mateta or Edouard could be. They're decent. They're not sexy pickups, but they're decent. Glasner loves an attacking fullback as well, so Mitchell or Daniel Munoz are worth keeping an eye on. Munoz in particular loves an attacking return. He signed for Palace from Genk in Belgium, and last season in Belgium, he got 7 goals and 7 assists in just 30 games. So that's almost a 1-in-2 return from a defender. And even though Palace don't play in game week 29, their fixtures are pretty good until the end of the season. So if you've given up on the concept of clean sheets, and I'll be honest, I don't blame you if you have, attack-minded defenders could be the way to go, in which case Munoz should be someone on your radar. Wolves, they take on Fulham in game week 28. Gary O'Neill's side have had a brilliant season, and even in the absence of the likes of Cunha and Neto, they have continued to pick up results. Their away form has actually been a bit better than their home form in recent weeks. They've won at Chelsea, Spurs and Brentford and drawn at Brighton before that defeat to Newcastle United. At Molineux, it's been a bit more mixed. They've had wins over Everton and Sheffield United, but defeats to Manchester United and Brentford. Fulham is not an easy game right now, but offensively, Wolves have thrived this season. So if someone like Sarabia is still available in your draft league, he's one to consider. And Bellegarde has been playing very far forward in the absence of Cunha. He's not done a lot, but he has been playing far forward. So if he can translate his positioning into goals and points, he could be one to consider. Brighton have a home game against Nottingham Forest in game week 28. They earned an XG of 1.53 against Everton in game week 26. They had 15 shots in their 3-0 defeat against Fulham, and that is the problem. They are struggling to turn their dominance into goals, which is a bit of an issue. If Brighton do float your boat, though, then Enciso is back fit after a long injury layoff. He played 45 minutes at Craven Cottage. He got 4 goals and 3 assists last season in just 794 minutes, which works out, I think, to a return every 113 minutes. He is very minimally owned in draft. And Facundo Buonanote's place in the team looks even more assured with the news of Karu Mitoma's season-ending injury. So he's another attacking option who could be available. He only played around 30 minutes against Fulham, but that European game coming up against Roma could explain that. And the last team to flag for game week 28 are Everton, who play Manchester United. Over the years, you would think that a trip to Manchester United and Old Trafford is something that you would want to avoid when you're picking your fantasy team. But it's not like that anymore. United continue to underwhelm. They lost their last home game against Fulham. There was a lot of talk after that one that the players demanded the next day off despite losing. They were well beaten in the end by Manchester City this weekend, and I think it's pretty clear that all is still not well there. Ten Hag's future remains up in the air. Marcus Rashford has been stinking the place out despite that goal against City. And Everton are having a quietly good season. They're defensively solid, they're good from set pieces, and I actually fancy them to get something out of this game, and that means someone like Doucouré could be a good pickup this week, having returned from injury in game week 25. He's got 6 goals and 2 assists this season, and I can see him causing United's backline some problems, to be honest. The longest he has gone as well, by the way, without a goal this season is 3 games, and he has not scored in his last 3 games. So that means he is very much due a goal in his next game. James Tarkowski could be a decent signing too if he's available, just with set pieces in mind, given Everton's strength there and United's weakness. And I suppose we have to have a word on the big one, Liverpool against Manchester City. All the big names will of course be taken in your league, but there is still a chance that the likes of Bradley, Kelleher, Joe Gomez, Harvey Elliott, or even John Stones could be available. Stones is obviously playing very far forward now. He's basically playing as a midfielder. So if you can deal with the constant threat of Pep Roulette, and I can't, by the way, he should be on your radar. Alexis McAllister is another player who's having a good time of it right now. He could be on the waivers. He got an assist for Darwin's winner at Forest, and he's actually got a goal and 3 assists in his last 3 games. So he is a man in form. So a huge amount to think about. Hopefully there's a few names there that can help you to improve your chances over the next few weeks. But the big thing for me is to weigh up game week 29, weigh up your chances of getting a win in your head-to-head. If it's not a head-to-head league, weigh up the points gap between you and your rivals and work out if you think surgery to your team in that week is going to be worth it without damaging the long-term setup of your side. Everybody's personal situation will be different, but what you do not want to do is throw out good long-term assets for 1-week punts that might not be able to secure you the win anyway. Look at your squad, look at the players you're happy to lose, focus on replacing them, but do not lose sight of the importance of game week 28 when planning for game week 29. Okay, it's nearly time to go, but before we do, let's have one to watch.
The FPL Draft Zone. One to watch.
Yes, our one to watch player is a player who isn't yet an in-demand draft option, but who might just become one before the end of the season. And this week we're looking at Crystal Palace midfielder Matheus Franca, who came off the bench in Glasner's first game against Burnley and picked up 2 assists. He also played just under half an hour this weekend against Spurs. He is a Brazilian under-20 international, cost Palace around £17 million in the summer, a fee that could rise to £26 million, and yet under Roy Hodgson he could not get a look in. However, that could be about to change under Glasner. He came off the bench to replace Eze at Spurs, and given Eze's injury track record this season, it looks like Franca is next in line to get a starting spot should he pick up another knock. He only got 3 goals last season in Brazil before joining Palace. He got 8 the season before that, so there's absolutely no sign that he is prolific in any way. But there are good fixtures coming up for Palace, with Forest and Bournemouth in game weeks 30 and 31. So he is one to keep an eye on over the next few game weeks, just in case he can force his way into that Palace starting 11. And that is almost it for today. Game week 28 starts on Saturday the 9th of March with the early kickoff between Manchester United and Everton. The deadline for your waivers is Friday the 8th of March at 11 a.m. Don't forget there are doubles for Bournemouth and Luton, but also keep in mind that there are very good single fixtures for a host of teams as well. And of course, there is that difficult to navigate game week 29 to consider too. So lots to think about, and hopefully we've given you a few suggestions that might help secure you that all-important win. We'll be back next week with more waiver suggestions, ones to watch, heroes, villains and more. And in the meantime, please do not forget to subscribe to us on whatever podcast platform you use. It would also be amazing if you could leave us a little review. That would help other managers to find us. You could also give us a follow on social media. We're at FPL Draft Zone on X and on Instagram. And until next time, good luck with all things draft, and bye for now.